You'll hear me say many times that motivation is a moving target. And that's a very important concept to understand because in order to hit a moving target, we're going to need lots of ammunition. That sounds simple, but most people are not very good at self-motivation, hence why most people aren't successful at being their own bosses. So when attacking a large goal, we need to have a steady stream of motivation. And the motivation can come from external sources. I'm a big fan of watching motivational videos or reading motivational, inspirational books or talking to motivational, inspirational people. But at the same time, we also have to supplement that with our own internal motivation. That comes from our vision and our self-talk and how well we're connected with that vision. Now, in the journey of coming up with our emotional purposes, it's not like you're just going to have one session sitting down at a desk and boom, you've got all your emotional purposes. It's an ongoing process. It's a balance because you don't want to just focus on your emotional purposes before you go to work. Otherwise, you're never going to get to work. And you don't want to just work without your emotional purposes because you'll go crazy. Working without emotional purpose is like running a machine without oil. But only focusing on your emotional purposes is like filling up the oil can with no intention of actually using it on the machine. So we need both combined. The self-reflection to discover our emotional purposes paired with the work, because through the work, we'll actually discover more emotional purposes. Now, through my journey, I've realized the absolute importance of using our obstacles as part of our motivation, as part of our emotional purposes. You may have already watched the video in these EdApp courses on the obstacle becoming the way in regards to our resistances. Oftentimes, the things that we resist the most tend to give us our greatest growth. But I believe that to be so true, and it's been so true for myself and for many others that I've coached, that when we resist something, as long as it's not something that's immoral, oftentimes the resistance is actually an indicator that we need to grow in that area. So the purpose of this video is to help you come up with more emotional purposes based on the things you dislike. Using our resistances, using the obstacles in our emotional path as ammunition to hit that moving target of motivation. So the exercise is real simple. I want you to pull something out to take some notes on, or pull something up on your computer to write this down, because this is an exercise that you're going to do after watching this video. So to give you an example, here's just a brief little bit that I wrote down to show you what this will look like. Feeling like my work isn't getting results that I wanted. Like I'm on a hamster wheel of work. Putting myself out there and being rejected as a leader, people bailing on meetings, etc. So your first task, it's going to be real fun. It's going to be like a little mini puke session for yourself. You're going to write down every possible thing you can think of that you dislike. In fact, if you want to get really into this right now, go ahead and pause this video and get a good head start on that list right now. Once you've created that list, the next step, it takes some pretty good self-awareness. So you might not be as good at it at the beginning, but through practice and through growth in your self-knowledge and self-awareness, you'll get a lot better at the second part. But the second part is real fun. It's learning how to take these things that we resist and turn them into the way, turning the obstacle into the way. So, for example, just to give you an example of what that looks like. Well, one truth that I really believe is that if we choose short-term, easy solutions, it generally creates long-term challenge in our life. So when we choose short-term challenge, it generally creates long-term easy. You know, there's gray areas in there as well, but that's generally how it works out and how it's worked out in my life. So part of this emotional purpose was just knowing I was making a sacrifice and saying, well, I'm making all these sacrifices, I better utilize my time. Part of the emotional purpose of this, of making these sacrifices, just turned into, well, I'm making sacrifice, might as well make the most of it. But then there's some other subtle purposes that came from it. Same with the rejection, the emotional toll of a lot of this stuff. A lot of these challenges, their baseline emotional purpose, in addition to working hard to be proactive against them, another baseline emotional purpose for them is they are great indicators of things that we get to let go. In the book, The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer talks about how we all have thorns in our side, and the thorn represents an external event or an external factor that is causing us pain. So the thorn could be a bad relationship or a bad breakup. The thorn could be a money issue. The thorn could be something that happened in your childhood with your parents that causes issues now. A thorn could be anything that causes negative emotion in us. Our happiness should never be attached to external things, because then it's always going to be attached to the emotional roller coaster. The only true way to be really consistently joyful and happy is to bring that within us. Let go of the external factors that cause the emotional roller coaster. So what Michael Singer says, most people, when they have a thorn in their side, instead of addressing the thorn, they avoid it. So they create all these contraptions to avoid touching the thorn. And the way that could look, an easy example is, let's say there's a family and there's a dad that got laid off of work and money's tight. And then one day, little Johnny comes home and says that he wants a new bike. And dad says, no, we can't do it. Get it. And Johnny starts complaining, and dad gets really, really angry and storms off. And mom says, remember, Johnny, we don't talk about money with your dad. So that's an example of building a contraption around dad's thorn, around the thorn. We don't talk about that when dad's around. We do stuff like that all the time. We try to avoid the things that cause us pain, that causes the thorn pain, rather than addressing it. Because if we build a contraption around the thorn, here's the issue. The thorn's still going to be there. It's like putting a Band-Aid over an infected wound. Yeah, you might cover it up, you might hide it, but the infection's only going to get worse underneath the surface. So we must understand that we can never avoid pain. Through avoiding it, we only perpetuate it. It builds up and will eventually explode. So the way Michael talks about getting rid of this thorn is addressing it head on and letting go. This is an emotional pulling of the thorn. And the way you do that is just like everything else. You run towards it. You be the buffalo that runs towards the storm instead of away from the storm. I'm a big believer that personal development has nothing to do with adding things to ourselves. It has to do with letting go. It's not about adding things. It's about letting go of our resistances. It's about letting go of our fears, letting go of our self-doubts. That's what self-development is. If I want to live a meaningful life, I'm going to rock the boat. You know, if I don't rock the boat, then I'll die unnoticed. My life won't have any substance. So if I want to create a substantial life, I'm going to end up maybe rocking the water a little bit, rocking the boat, and that's going to cause some people to have friction. How can I use that to inspire me? Well, that negative energy is just energy. So energy can be turned into a good thing. It can be turned into momentum. Ask yourself, have you ever been motivated by anger? Maybe somebody said something that pissed you off and it actually motivated you to prove that person wrong. I'll never forget when I was in high school and I wanted to try out for the drum line. And I talked to the drum instructor and he said, I don't know if you're going to be good enough for the snare line. And I took that so personally that I worked hard all summer and I made the snare line. And in fact, within 2 years, I was the center snare drummer, which is like the captain of the drum line. So the point is, anger can be a very powerful motivator. And what a great emotional purpose. I want to learn to be non-bothered. I want to learn how to not be bothered by any negative situation in life. And I want to learn how to turn that situation into an advantage for me. Does that sound like a pretty great life? I think so. One of the greatest things that I've been able to develop here is this attitude where literally that whole cheesy quote, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. I don't even see, I'm getting to the point where I barely even see the obstacles anymore. I'm just like, all right, here's the thing. How can we use it to our advantage? Not even how can we overcome it, but how can we use it to our advantage? So for example, feeling like my work isn't getting results. How could I use that to my advantage? Well, first off, I'm going to let it motivate me to learn more and get better, to improve my skill so that I do feel like I start getting traction. You know, if I'm not getting traction, I'm not going to blame my circumstance because that's not going to help me. I need to improve myself to be better for the circumstance. Stop praying for life to be easier. Start praying for yourself to be better, to face the challenges of life. In addition to that, I can use it as a motivator to essentially like, well, I hate the way I feel right now. I want to not feel that way. So let's push through it. A good affirmation I always try to use whenever I feel like my work isn't getting results is I always get paid for the work I do. I just might not get paid right away. And it's true. You always do get paid for the work you do. It just might show up later and in a way differently than you thought initially. So what a great emotional purpose, learning how to let go of my initial expectations of the results I should get, learning how to let go of attachment to the results, therefore achieving the path to serenity. So feeling like my work isn't getting results can become a doorway to serenity. That becomes my emotional purpose. I want to let go of my attachment to results. We're getting kind of deep here philosophically and psychologically. And that's what this takes, guys. It takes a good understanding of not only yourself, but of your challenges and how you can twist them into an advantage. You know, people bailing on meetings, how can we twist that into a motivational purpose? Well, first off, I want to get better at setting meetings and solidifying appointments. Because I want people to know that they should value my time. Well, how do I get other people to know they should value my time? Well, first off, I should probably value my time. So get really to a point where I really value my time. Therefore, that is conveyed to others when I talk to them and they value my time so that fewer people bail. Now, of course, people are people and they're going to bail no matter what and anything you're doing. So for those remaining people, after I've gotten really good at showing them that my time is valuable and that we need to respect each other's time, for those remaining people, I get to practice adaptability. When somebody bails and I didn't have anything planned for that, I get to shift quickly. I get to learn how to be adaptable. Everything that you don't like is more than likely an incredible opportunity for growth. If you're worried about the way people perceive you, that's a great opportunity to get better at building meaningful, intimate and deep relationships that won't be affected by one awkward circumstance. But B, it's also an opportunity to let go of your attachment to those relationships. Because if somebody bails on a relationship with you because of one awkward situation, they weren't a good friend anyway. It's a great way to let go of flaky friends. How we do one thing is how we do everything. Why is that? Because you are the same factor that does everything. If you're a certain way in school and you're a certain way at work and you're a certain way in your relationships, you are the common denominator there. So you are the same one in the relationships and in the work and in school and all that. So how we do one thing tends to lead into how we do everything else. It's how we show up in life. All of these are great opportunities to work on yourself. They're indicators and it shows you everything, even if you don't like seeing it. So all of these can be turned into motivation. It's simply a matter of, are you going to make the effort to do so? And I really hope you do, because motivation is a moving target and you're going to need all the ammunition you can get.